Hello. Today I want to talk about dying a good death. For many people, the words dying a good death might sound like a contradiction in terms. Surely death can only be viewed as bad, and therefore it is impossible to die a good death. I would like to put across an alternative viewpoint, whilst recognising that this is a very sensitive area of human experience. Everything that I've written here comes out of my own experience as a parent, without any specialist medical knowledge, of a terminally ill child, and particularly comes to mind as I approach yet another anniversary of our daughter's death. Her name was Celia, and she was born in January 1998 and died in August 1998. She was diagnosed antenatally with a severe life-limiting illness. Any illness can be frightening, but I experienced a deep sense of fear with regard to Celia's terminal illness. There was a fear of her pain, a fear of my loss, and a fear of her dying that I knew I needed to be faced head-on. In my case, a sense of perspective was most helpful here, as my Christian faith enabled me to trust that Celia's death would not be the end of her existence. Our experience was that there was a specific point in the medical treatment of her terminal illness where there was a transition from curative to palliative care. In simple terms, this means that any medical interventions would stop trying to make her better and instead would try to make her as comfortable as possible as her body slowly began to close down. The relationships between medic, patient and carer are absolutely critical as this pathway is negotiated. If it is possible to maintain positive relationships at all times, this will be ultimately helpful to all parties. Sadly, this was not always the case for us. One way of managing the transition from cure to care is to consider the quality of life of the patient. This is particularly helpful when assessing the treatment options for aggressive returning cancers and other chronic or progressive life-limiting illnesses. Another way of putting this is to weigh up the benefit against the burden for any particular treatment. We had to do this on a daily basis for Celia, and it helped us as we made decisions about what we felt was in her best interests. I recognise that others may wish to add or subtract things from what I say below, but in my view, the following are helpful once the transition into palliative care has been made. The patient and carer needs to have agency at all times. They need to be allowed to make choices. Keeping positive relationships between patient, carer and medic is vital at all times in the palliative care process. In an ideal scenario, the patient and carer should be given time to reconcile themselves to the process of dying. Wherever possible, pain and other end-of-life symptoms needs to be managed well, with recourse to professional palliative care expertise, whilst recognising that experiencing pain is part of being a sentient being. Fear needs to be addressed in whatever way is most helpful for the patient and carer, whether that is religious or secular pastoral support. Location is important, and if possible, the patient should be allowed to be in an environment and context of their own choice. If these elements are managed well and the palliative care pathway has been embraced by all parties, then I believe that it is possible for someone to die a good death, a death that has dignity and meaning, and from a faith perspective, one that has purpose and direction. For us, there were a number of tensions which made Celia's death more complex than it could have been. Nonetheless, I believe that we were able to play our part in her dying a good death. I've written about Celia's story at greater length in my account of her life and death, which is linked in this blog for anyone who is interested.